Hi, welcome to GrimChat. Today I'm talking about games and a whole bunch of other stuff, hopefully, with James Raggi of Lamentations of the Flame Princess fame. Do you want to introduce yourself, James?
Yes, James Raggi.
Raggi, I did it wrong in the... Yeah, that happens to me all the time.
Yeah,
I know, I'm
yeah.
sorry.
James Raggi of Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and hello to everybody 8 days before the end of the world.
I give us 9.
Yeah. Settle
Yeah,
in
you
for
got
a
to get
day, then
settled in.
fuck it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
God.
So got a bunch of stuff to talk about. I think we have some stuff in common, some stuff not in common. I think we both suffer the slings and arrows of certain quarters when it comes to stuff that we do. But I'll get the unpleasant stuff out of the way first.
Okay.
Okay, so when I said I was going to talk to you, quite a few people wanted me to ask you about the status of the GMs book for
Oh,
LOTFP.
yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all to be the first thing. Look, me, LOTFP in general are fucking horrible at any sort of timeliness, good workflow. I think I'm just a chaos magnet, and there's no good excuse. None. I have nothing to say that's going to be like, these are the good reasons why this is happening. All I can say is last year, England Upturn and Broodmother Sky Fortress were things that were supposed to be out in 2012. They finally got out. Let's see. Else, yeah, Towers 2, also a 2012 thing, finally came out last year. World of the Lost should have been out in 2014. So we are fucking late. There's no good excuse. Work is always ongoing. I really hope that stuff's going to get done and out. Oh, it's fucking insulting to say, oh, this year, but the world is what it is. But look, we just caught up on funding stuff we're behind on last year. Stuff is getting done. It's just slow and stupid. And all the tomatoes thrown my way deserved. It will come out, and cross fingers, it will be fucking spectacular.
Yeah, I know the problem. My crowdfunded Gore project is well behind. There's just sometimes there's nothing you can do. Sometimes there is. The world has a way of throwing stuff at you.
And trust me, I mean, every convention I go to, where's the referee book? Every few days, and it's at this point, it feels like almost an albatross. Like, oh, let me just reprint that last one as is, even though to me it's 5 years out of date, and not do anything with the improvements just to get it out of the way. But that's insulting too. And I just have to, try to clear my mind of the crap and just get on with getting it done. And so then when people get it, they'll go, holy shit, like they do with, all these other, that were late. I mean, nobody got World of the Lost and said, well, gee, I'd rather would have gotten whatever shitty thing you could have done 2 years ago. Towers 2 and Broodmother. I mean, yeah, it really fucking sucks, and I beat myself up that it takes so long to get that done. But I wish we'd gotten the really 32-page soft cover, really cut down thing. Years ago. No, when it comes out, it's worth it. I just have to, as a rule, never go to crowdfunding when something is just in progress. That's the lesson. It's got to be fucking done. And it's, and then, that's the lesson. I got really over enthusiastic in 2012, 2013.
And you're paying for it now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So what's the next horrible thing you want to talk about?
It's not really that horrible from now on. I mean, we're probably going to touch on some controversial stuff later on because you're talking to me, so it happens. The next big thing people are asking is where can they get access to the free RPG Day products? if they can, or are there any plans to make them available?
Okay. Okay. Well, you mean the prints or the PDFs? Well, I'll go through it all. The Better Than Any Man and Doom Cave of the Crystal-Headed Children. It's available for free download or pay what you want from the One Bookshelf sites. I've got those directly linked from my website. Slugs, I will get the PDF as soon as the print copies are gone. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a mix-up with what happened with the extra copies, and I didn't get them until last year, so I still have, I think, a couple hundred. Those are available in print from my website for just 50 cents each. Add that on to whatever order. And, and I've got a couple of upcoming conventions, but those don't start till Easter, and away a ton at those things. So I'm guessing by Free RPG Day this year, last year's Free RPG Day thing will be available for free download. But, it's... I mean, that's something I could technically do at any time, but let's do it right. Let's get rid of let's get the print things out of my house before I start giving it away. And then we've got this year's Free RPG Day thing that's running, of course, behind schedule, but I'm still hoping we can get that in under the wire. That I'm going to have to do not through an official crowdfunding site, but that will basically be crowdfunded through print. Again, one of the reasons I feel like it's such a crunch, because it's got to be fucking done before history. It's got to be fucking ready to go by the time I'm asking people to, pitch in money for it. So
yeah.
That's
Okay, since you touched on it, so One Bookshelf, you put out a fairly strongly worded letter in 2015, I think, when some of these censorship issues and things started coming up at One Bookshelf. You're still there. I'm still there. Have they done anything to reassure you, or?
I've had no communication with any of them. And when all that stuff started, I did send an email. Totally psycho email that I sent off, but I never got a response. And I've had some casual conversations with people from there at the at conventions. But I am very surprised that nothing has happened with me with that, because I intentionally do. And if some of my authors want to do something weird, and I let them. And with what people are complaining about often, and what people have complained about publicly about some of my stuff, surprised that I haven't had a problem with One Bookshelf. I don't want to have a problem with them. They make me a lot of money, and I think I make them a decent amount of money. If they're online accurate, I am a top 2% publisher, which I think means there are 50 more publishers that are ahead of me. I mean, there's a lot of publishers on that site, but I'm not nothing. Yeah,
You're usually in the top publishers on the front page on the left, which means you are obviously pretty way up there. So
I don't want to have a problem, but I'm not going to change what I do for them. And if there is a problem, it's going to be an issue where I take a stand and eat a lot of financial shit. Because if I have to start worrying about anything of mine getting pulled, I mean, if they start doing that, I'm going to have to drop them completely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have a situation where, well, gee, is this going to be safe for this thing or not? And I got to put I'm not going to deal with that. I hope there continues to be no problem. I don't want a problem. I just feel like I have to make plain what's going to happen if there is.
Do you think there's any particular reason you haven't been picked on? I mean, you're almost as much of a hate figure in certain circles as I am. I mean, your Dungeonist Suck seems to have something ragging on you, every time they have anything on there.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't. The thing that surprises me is like when Avengers things got flagged, and it got whitelisted, so it ended up not being a problem other than being taken down for a couple of days. But I don't think I have anything as outwardly crass or just fucking as Tournament of Rapists.
Yeah.
Avengers stuff, there are a couple of my things that I think would be comparable to the kind of stuff he does, and he had people getting on his ass just because it was pulled. It doesn't matter that it was whitelisted. Once it was pulled and people learned that he had this certain stuff in there, certainly he was just a disgusting person and blah, blah, blah. And I'm stuff would get targeted, but not mine. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So
please, I just encourage people, if you don't like my shit, just one, and if you're in a conversation where someone asks, just give your honest opinion, but don't fuck with people. That's
why is that so difficult? It seems like the obvious answer. Don't buy things you won't like. Okay, so let's get into some game type stuff then. Okay, so Lamentations is pretty, attached to the OSR, part of the OSR, which is essentially not to be dismissive or anything, but it's essentially people publishing their house rules for old school D&D, really.
No. I think that's at this point just a small part of it. The things that are most exciting about the OSR, it's Red and Pleasant Land and Maze of the Blue Medusa and Yoon Suin and the adventures and settings and the things that people do with it beyond the rules. And I'm always surprised when people want to buy my rule book, and I think it's just and I know it's horrible saying that. I do the best job I can with it, and I'm glad people are buying it, but to me, personally, it's the least interesting thing in my catalog, because I've done a couple clever things with it, but in the end, it's available for free download as well, and I have that in my web store. I've got the link saying go check it out free before you buy it, and I have it in the catalogs that you can get it for free download when I go to conventions and hand out the catalogs, and people still buy it, which is great. Just maybe my thing is the best iteration of that for people. That's awesome, but to me it is really just a modification on someone else's work. And therefore, to me, that's the craftsmanship, but not art of what I'm doing, if I can sound completely pretentious about it.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to... No, carry on.
Yeah, the things, buy the adventures and the settings and the weird little add-ons. And to me, that's where it shines, because I know there are some people that have bought the LOTFP rulebook, and they just have that reaction, like, the same old rules we've seen. And if you're on the outside, all the little tweaks and changes, they're not going to mean anything. If you're not in it to know the difference, like Jeff Reins has been doing a blog post series about the difference between Lamentations and the old 1981 Basic Expert. And, you have to be really into it to understand the differences at that level. But if you are into it, some of the differences seem huge. But if you're coming to this, if you're a big Pathfinder person, that's how you got into the hobby, and then you're looking at this, it's not that big a difference. If you're out there in Apocalypse or Fate Land and you're looking into this, it's kind of like if you're into heavy metal and you're making, the arguments, that this is epic power metal and that's epic symphonic power metal. It's completely different, you asshole. So, so I encourage people, if you're curious about Lamentations, the rules, certainly, they're going to do the job. Stuff for free download, look at Better Than Any Man, look at Doom Cave. And and there's all sorts of free stuff that people have released. I'm encouraging third-party publication. There's all sorts of stuff to look at that aren't just pure rules to get the feel and flavor of the game.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to get onto. I mean, if we look at the base, like you say, it's just the same basic game, unless you're really deep into the details. But what struck me, though, was what you were really selling, even with the main rulebook, was a theme, a mood, a mode of play. This is the way we play. This is the kind of feel that our games have. That's what you were selling. This kind of brutal, bizarre, sort of horrific side to it. That's what it always felt to me that you were selling. That was the main selling point. I mean, you didn't really have much in the way of setting.
The vibe and the artwork and stuff.
Yeah. You didn't really have much in the way of setting. The rules were familiar, but what was different was the presentation and the style and the way that seemed to resonate with people. And that's not usually an aspect of the games that people concentrate on in presentation. It's normally,
it should be, because
these are our rules. Yeah, but I mean, normally what people are doing is, here's how the rules are different and how they support this kind of play, and here's the setting, and less on here's how we intend it to be played and so on. Because that's kind of backwards normally. I mean, I wouldn't normally try to tell people how to play a game that I've written. I just give them a world to play in. So I find it interesting that you've had such success with what could be seen as a kind of backwards way of doing things.
Well, I guess, but I mean, the rules are the rules, and people use them for standard D&D style play without any of the weirdness, but the artwork does set the stage. So even though the rules might be familiar, if you look at the artwork and see what the artwork's telling you, and then go to pick up books, the other books won't be that big a surprise. The fact that it's its own tone, that's not necessarily associated with this kind of rules, it's not going to be a shock to you if you've seen the rules, you've seen the artwork, and you're like, okay, that's what these people are up to.
Yeah. I mean, are you a kind of person that thinks that system does matter?
I like to... That's complicated, because obviously there's certain families of systems and certain groupings of systems where I'm sure that Lamentations could be made to work just fine with any of the RuneQuest style games, or a Traveler system, any sort of old school kind of not narrative disassociative stuff. And I'm stepping in it by using jargon like that, but I think it does matter when you get to something like the Apocalypse games or Fate, because the way they use aspects or moves, it's a fundamental different way to play. It's not simply I say what I do and then see how the rules deal with that. There's an engagement with the rules in certain systems completely different than what I do, or what traditional old school systems, even something like GURPS or there's a certain case where the rules are just the flavor and the rules really don't matter. But since people started saying system matters, specifically been making systems that have to matter. The system is how you play the game. Whereas to me, when I'm making stuff, I'm not paying attention to the system. I just make stuff and then figure out how do I bolt it to this system that I've got sitting here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess older style systems, it's more like getting in a rocket. You get in the rocket, you aim it where you want to go, and steer. Whereas the narrative games is more like warp drive. You move everything else around you to get where you want to go. Kind of. Maybe that's too nerdy an analogy. I don't know. So, what other games do you play? What other systems do you enjoy, or have you enjoyed in the past?
Role playing. It's difficult because I'm an idiot who, after being here 10 years, hasn't picked up the language. So any group that I move in has to speak English. So I don't feel comfortable doing that in other people's groups. So really, as far as other role-playing games, I really don't ever get to play. Sometimes I get to dabble in card games and board games and stuff. But role-playing games, it's really not a lot of variety over here as far as role-playing games. I try to read stuff, but most of the time I'm mean about it. Like I got that Call of Cthulhu 7th edition Kickstarter, and it showed up, and neither of us have any fucking right to start going finally on someone else's Kickstarter.
Okay. We can just bitch about Skarka. We can't bitch about KOC. Okay.
Yeah, well, we can't really. Yeah, until all our shit's delivered, we can't bitch about Skarka either. So and it's just I like reading the what's it called, the fluff. The reading the non-rule stuff, but I start reading the rule stuff and my eyes start crossing. It's like, I don't want to deal with any of this shit. It's like Trail of Cthulhu. I have almost the full line of Trail of Cthulhu books. People don't understand how that system's supposed to work, and I really don't care. They just generally have a good enough team of writers that are writing what the adventures are about or what the setting material is. Like Bookhounds of London is wonderful. Dreamhounds of Paris, I can't get artwork because, and to me, a book about artists should have just front to back immaculate artwork. Some of that's a little rough, but all of the writing in Trail of Cthulhu is fucking great, and this happens and that. Yeah, that's great. But when it comes to figuring out these rules and I just gets fuzzy. I can't. I'm getting to be an old man. It's like, what is this new shit? I can't even know heights. It's honestly. So everything that I do gets, even when I want to drastically change things in the system, it's still a variation on a theme. And maybe if I'd first, I'd be, doing life path character generation and stuff like that. But I think these old school games are very versatile. I mean, look, done with these things, just in terms of presentation, but also in the rules. The stuff Kevin Crawford does isn't strict old school kind of things, and he's done all sorts of settings and all sorts of things. What else? Now I'm blanking, and I'm trying to look at my bookshelf, but everything's things. But yeah, there's. I mean, if you look at the systems that have come out the past 2-3 years, the new variations, it's not simply just D&D reprinted. They're changing things. And Dungeon Crawl Classics is a huge example. There are so many things in there that fundamentally changes the game. Read the adventures or read the rule book, it's just a variation on something you already know. It's not a new system to learn. It's just a new variant. Oh, casting spells is done this way instead of that way. Completely foreign. And so I think that is the great strength of the OSR. And I think that's also the problem. People complain, why is OSR just based on D&D? Mix and match all these things that really are very different. But the underlying systems are similar enough that you can buy Dungeon Crawl Classic supplements and they work perfectly with your Osric or your Adventurer Conqueror Kings or your Arrows of Indra or your Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And if you start saying, well, our thing based on flashing blades, and it's not going to fucking mix with anything, so what's the point of calling it OSR? There's a difference between the specific OSR and old school in general. They're not the same thing. The OSR is this offshoot that's doing all this weird stuff that's based on what's come before. It's really mutating into a new thing, but what else? So I keep thinking, well, maybe we shouldn't be all old school Renaissance anymore, but what the fuck are we talking about? We still got class and level in the 6 ability scores, so who the hell are we kidding on that either? So it's complicated. It's not just a simple, oh, these people are pretending it's 1981 for the rest of their lives. It's not that simple.
Yeah. So would you say OSR has its core around those rules, however much you bend and twist them? But say,
as long
as a style is
bending and twisting.
Yeah. So what is your design ethos? What are you kind of aiming for when you do a project? What is it you want to achieve?
It depends on the project. I mean, really, every project has got its own point to make. Yeah, and once that point's made, hopefully I'm not making the same point every project, although that's not for me to judge ultimately. But I hope that, I mean, stop in adventures, and I'll go ahead and, volunteer one of those. The force field around the adventure area.
Oh, you still there?
Up in 3 things the past 3 years now. They're around the adventure area that the adventurers have to figure out how to get out of. It's popped up 3 times. Like, okay, there's going to be no adventure that I ever release where the adventure area is trapped in a force field. So I sometimes, with the way projects take a long time to get finished, things that'll sneak in there that you realize, oh, that thing's similar to this other thing. But luckily, what happens within the force field of these adventures completely different from each other. So it's still a different play experience, but even something like an overarching plot device, want to keep a better eye on not repeating in the future. But the point of there is no overall point except maybe make it strange and something that other publishers aren't ever likely to do. What's your new idea? What's your freaky idea that you can apply that would fit in? Mm-hmm. Go from there.
Art is clearly very important to you. Personally, in my own work, I'm often very frustrated by the fact that my art budgets will not stretch to getting more work. I spend more time picking on quality. You seem to manage to get both quality and quantity. When you're crowdfunding, that's a bit easier. But do you think that pays off financially to make that kind of forward investment in the art, or is it more that it pays off for you aesthetically and in satisfaction?
Well, both. The way things work is when I'm pricing projects, it's a multiple based on cost. So if I'm spending more on art, it's going to make a more expensive book. So trying to get more and more on royalty deals, so I'm not paying out of pocket up front. But of course, there's a certain level of success as an artist that's like, no, fuck you, pay me. Whereas,
yeah.
Then you start dealing with very talented, more hobbyist artists who, forever. It'll look great when they're done, but they'll take forever. And then, they hopefully be very well rewarded in royalties afterwards. So it's just a giant balancing act. What can I get done? Sometimes things don't go so well, and I really just like, oh God, what do I do with this? And it's really not an option to just throw out everything and start all over again. So I am still a small publisher. I'm still working out of the living room. There are limits.
Yeah,
I just really get obstinate and hard-headed about certain things, and that's one of the reasons things take so long, and one of the reasons why things, much more than not, turn out well in the end.
Yeah, and the professional artists will sometimes get higher priority work, and you can't necessarily expect to be top of the queue. Is the other problem you can face.
I find that. Yeah, it's weird. It's like the more pro people I use, for the most part, don't seem to be that glad for, because usually I start looking at an online thing. It's like, oh, this person's really good. Oh, fuck, they work for Magic. Shit, because that means, okay, they're going to be booked and they're going to be fucking expensive, and I'm and I guess the success I have had has given me a certain privilege and budget. So when I say that Yannick Bouchard, to me, works surprisingly cheap, and I've used him for a lot of stuff over the past couple of years. When I say he works surprisingly cheap, this is something that even just 3-4 years ago, I would start like at his price. So it's all relative. I mean, hopefully in the coming years, the success will continue. So I can look at anyone that says, "Oh, they work for Magic." Well, I got them now. So it's just because if you remember those first things I put out, they were basically photocopied, or Death Frost Doom, the first printing, I'd get an order, I'd print it out on an inkjet printer, and there's lots of black even in the early editions of that, and all of the trimming and the stapling were done by hand, and the art was all done by somebody local, and it was been there, and I have been lucky enough and just a little bit talented enough to get the attention to have people like it to where it can build and grow, and now I can. So it's a long road, but I started my business because my wife bought me a printer, and most people aren't going to be out jobless in a foreign country, so maybe they can buy their own printer. And that's how I started. And anyone listening to this, any single fucking person listening to this, and if you can do that, then you too can get to the next level if you make smart choices. And it does take a little bit of luck, but that luck is just success. It's not the ability to continue. Put your head down and put out thing after thing after thing after thing, and if you're making smart decisions, it easier as you go, or shall I say, you'll be able to do more as you go, because everything you release gets a little bit different attention, a little bit more attention. And so every time I release something new, that's also a bump for everything in the back catalog.
Yeah, lots of people don't appreciate that, but whenever you put out something new, it does draw attention to everything else you've done, and you usually get a bit of a boost on everything else. Like I was saying in a stream, I think the other day, just trying puts you ahead of over 90% of people who never bother to try. So it's always worth having a bash at anything. So staying with the art, your partnership with Zach Smith, whatever you want to call him, has been pretty fruitful, really. I still like him and like his work, even though he's fallen out with me for some reason. But how did you get?
That seems to happen to you a lot,
doesn't it? I have opinions. Zach has opinions as well. We're both highly argumentative. I think it was only a matter of time till one or the other snapped. But I've got no problem with him personally. But it's been that partnership's been pretty fruitful for you, hasn't it? Is that continuing? Do you have more projects on the cards in the future?
It's his new project is in editing right now, and then after that's done, it'll go into layout. Hopefully that comes out this year. I cannot believe I've gotten to the point where I'm in January and I'm thinking maybe something will come out this year, but that's realistically I don't know why. There's got to be stuff I can do to fix that, and there probably is, and I'm going to work on that. But of course, I got this next thing I got to figure out first, and it's always like that. But there's something that it should be moving along. If everyone is on the ball, we could get this out by Gen Con. But just by saying that, I've completely ruined the chance. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Cursed.
But the book in the works, yes, it's Zach's got a lot of the art done, the writing's done. It's, as I said, it's in the editing process. So yes, collaboration is continuing.
Just out of curiosity, does he cause you more trouble, or do you cause him more trouble?
I don't think he causes me any trouble.
I think he just takes it all himself and feeds on it.
Well, any trouble, I don't think any of the trouble he deals with is because of me. Really don't get any of all the stuff that's directed at him. I really don't feel any effects of it, so we don't cause trouble for each other.
That's good. Keep it compartmentalized. Yeah.
The only issues you might have is he's I am volunteering things, but his vision of what he wants to do and my vision of what I want to publish, it massaging at some points. For example, Maze of the Blue Medusa was something I could have handled, but I guess I should say artistically, it would have been another crown jewel. But as far as the content and the more blatant, D&D isms that he plays with instead of coming up with new ones, that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to stay away from. I don't wandered monsters in new configurations. It's LOTFP protocol to come up with new stuff.
Yeah.
So he very much likes playing with the tropes and content of old D&D. I don't. So we have to work around that and the things that we work together on. And there are some things that are so dependent on that it's just that I could do a pass. I can't publish everything, and it's probably not good for, a single tied to a single publisher anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So, the kind of style that you present, we've talked a little about that, but it's kind of somewhere in the sort of horror / bizarro kind of arena. Now, horror gaming, other than comedy gaming, is probably one of the hardest things to pull off at the table with any kind of success. It's fairly easy to gross people out and things like that. But do you have any tips for players or games masters for making horror gaming really kind of work and pop at the table?
Not as such, because I have to tell you something. The more horrible the action happening in the game, the more everybody at the table is just laughing their ass off. It's you play it straight in the book, or there are plenty of times I'm not playing it straight in the book. It feeds off this. It's really hard when you're all sitting around a well-lit table, and it has to be well-lit because everyone's got to fiddle with their paper and their dice and and there are snacks, and this person's got to get up to go to the bathroom, and this person, it's my girlfriend, I have to take this call. Force that kind of really force that mood on the actual people around the table. I say I don't even try, because if you make things creepy enough, the players won't necessarily act frightened themselves, but they'll start making stupid decisions. They'll be freaking out in that way. They're like, oh crap, what's going on here? Where they're personally not stressed, but they're having like game stress. Like, how do we get out of this? Oh God, it's one of Jim's things. What do we do? And nobody will start to agree. And these things that if they just stuck together, they can get through no problem, they will fall apart because, no, I'm going to do this. This is the way. Well, screw you. I'm doing that. And then everything, they start to fall apart. It's just as good as if the players were actually intensely freaked out rather than just playing gameplay in, like any other gameplay. The results will still often be, to me, very fun. It's a fun game. I don't do this to make people miserable. So the fact that people are having fun freaking out and trying this and that, and this happened. Your character has 16 butts now. that's good enough for me. People are enjoying it. That's the whole fucking point of this.
Some people do some people do have fun by being miserable, though. I mean, people read Robin Hood books, people watch The Walking Dead, you know. So
but like I watch The Walking Dead. I like The Walking Dead. I like that oppressive atmosphere, but I don't try to get a group of people around and enjoy it as like a communal activity. I mean, even if I go see that kind of movie, you know, even if there's 100 people in the theater, it's sort of like everyone is there alone watching this thing. You're not wanting the talking and chit chat and camaraderie, wanting to watch the movie. It drives me fucking nuts when people talk in the theater. So, I think for that kind of intensity, trying to do it in a friendly environment, to me, is very difficult. I don't really. I mean, I've heard some play reports, but I for example, Death, Love, Doom has some of the sickest shit, and even my group wasn't that. You know, they weren't freaked out like I've heard some other groups have been, or how they've been reported. I don't know what's going on at their table. So, of course, my group has to deal with my shit every game, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's different if you're doing like a normal or average.
They're desensitized and traumatized and all have PTSD. So,
and then you throw one of my things in, but then shouldn't a campaign have a wide variety of stuff? And as I'm going through and saying that, I also want to make sure that I just put the little asterisk in there. This is all author dependent. And sure, I'm going to tend to gather authors that are more on board with what I do. But for example, Zach, aside from the rule book, Zach's stuff is by far the most popular of anything I've released and he doesn't get into the sick shit. He doesn't do the horror so much. You know, he's got Alice in Wonderland with vampires, but they're like Victorian proper etiquette kind of things. It's not just fuck you up horror. Vornheim's not horror. It's just a weird fantasy city. And then Broodmother Sky Fortress, which was just released that month. It's not horror at all.
That's just weirdo, bizarre.
Put the little asterisk that there's a lot of stuff under the LOTFP label that's horror and, you know, this is freaky, but there are very key things that aren't. To make sure anyone bothering listening this far that has no idea who I am gets that information at least. I don't know why you'd be listening. I am, but hi.
Well, we're talking about some general design and so on stuff as well. So I think there's value here for people who don't know who you are. Yeah. In your art and setting material, you often include firearms and sort of the styles moved more towards Renaissance and I guess clock punk almost in some sorts of ways. That's I call it
early modern.
That's kind of a sacred
academic term.
That's kind of a sacred cow for some people not to have firearms in your dungeons and so on. I mean, in one way, I guess that draws comparisons with, say, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which I think in feel is much closer to LOTFP than a lot of other stuff. But how do you feel it changes a game by introducing firearms? What's your approach to making them feel effective but not too overpowered?
They basically, firearms for that period will get one shot in a combat.
Yeah.
You won't get a chance to reload in adventurer skirmish combat. Those things take so damn long to reload. Nobody's going to sit there for the reload times while everyone else is doing stuff. So that's one balance. You get one shot, basically. As far as, I mean, you mentioned Warhammer. I mean, to me, when I first, in the late 80s, early 90s, found the first edition Warhammer role-playing game stuff, to me that changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. I love that game. I've got a lot of those books again, and they cost a lot on eBay, and I'm using some of them as reference to like writers for future projects.
Mm-hmm.
Or City and Marienburg, use that as a template on the level of detail to go into and how to present an old school setting. but I hate the specific rules and I hate the specific setting of Warhammer, but I still love it to death because it's 30 years war Germany, basically.
Yeah.
And what the hell am I doing? Early 1600s Europe. So it maps perfectly. I just Skaven in this chaos as cities or orcs. I don't need that stuff. It got to a point, 2011, 2012. It's like, why am I doing these these Earth analog things? Let's just start putting this shit on Earth. Yeah, so I don't have to come up with these backstories, but then gamers don't know how to deal with it. I mean, people for some reason will feel perfectly comfortable in Greyhawk or the Forgotten Realms, but you tell them, "Oh, put it on Earth," and they don't know what to do. Lots of writers, when you tell them not to use the certain D&D kind of things like the monsters or the demi-humans or the magic items, it's weird. They don't know how to operate because in the history of the world, most horror stories and horror movies and action stories and detective stories and romances, just about every story on the whole in the history of the planet has taken place on Earth. Comparatively few have taken place in Fantasyland or on alien worlds. Figure out how to do things with Earth. That being on Earth, not everything Lovecraft does, but everything that I like that Lovecraft's done, he doesn't place it on fantasy Earth. I mean, the Call of Cthulhu story at the Mountains of Madness are supposedly on real Earth. Yet they all have lots of freaky there.
Yeah.
And there's no conflict. And I don't understand why people have, and some people get it and don't want to do it, but it's the people that can't seem to get their head around it. I don't get it.
Yeah. Lovecraft's an interesting one. I mean, there's so much kind of historical, that's not exactly revisionism, but kind of re-examining old authors and holding their work accountable for things that they've said or done. I mean, there's little doubt that Lovecraft was a bigot, really, and that certainly informed his work, but that's a large part of what brings that kind of disgust and horror into his work. His fear of the unknown, of the other, of the different, is what informs his work and makes it work. So
I'm waiting for. Well, you know what I'm waiting for. I mean, I think it just finished up or finishing up today. That Call of Cthulhu Harlem supplement. That's fine. That's good. What? Where's the martyr to do the new Lovecraft supplement that keeps his racial attitudes?
Could you even do that today? No matter what kind of disclaimer or self-flagellation you put in the front, could you do it? I mean,
I think you could do it, but you couldn't advertise it.
Yeah,
that wouldn't be a selling point. You don't put that on the back of the book.
This is utterly racist. Yeah. I wrestle with this quite a bit. I have a huge amount of interest in the pulps, but when I write kind of pulp material or whatever, I want to try and preserve the feel and context of the original. I feel that a lot of games that try to explore the pulps try to sanitize the time period. And that seems like not only an artistic betrayal, but a kind of political betrayal of all the effort and sacrifice that's gone into advancing it since. You know?
Yeah, I don't. Well, it depends on what you're wanting to do. I mean, if you're in for the Indiana Jones adventure thrill kind of ride, is there to point how racist things were. And it seems that if you do that, that's got to be the point. It can't just be a side item that just happens to be in the book. And then there are people that explore that as well. But comfortable with it. I mean, why should they keep that element? I mean, they're doing a new work that's based on stuff, but it doesn't have to be based on all of it. It's got to retain their own sensibilities too. So
yeah, I think in a game, I mean, you can make heroes the exceptions, but to me, I don't know. I guess I studied history, so I'm a bit sensitive on certain topics. But if you're setting it in the real world and you're not representing the struggles and problems of that period, it just damages my ability to suspend disbelief and get into the world.
I don't have a problem with it. I just have a problem when people pat themselves on the back over it.
Yeah.
If you don't want to deal with the stuff, don't deal with it. Put a little note saying, yeah, we're leaving this stuff out. And then get on with it. But, like a whole essay, oh, yeah, this was so bad, and look at me realizing that's bad and making sure, then it just gets tedious. But, the fact that someone wants to gloss over unpleasant history to get to the stuff that they find exciting, I got no problem with it.
Mm. That kind of brings me on to something, because when we talk about that stuff, we're talking about presenting the historical period. If you're writing about that or writing in that context, you're not condoning what happened or saying it was a good thing. But there are people who have, like Varg Vikernes' mythic fantasy role-playing game is kind of explicitly racist. I know you were accused of supporting him, whatever. That's not what I'm getting onto here. It just makes a well, if you want to address that, you can. But I just think it makes an interesting kind of case in point to talk about as kind of a game as propaganda as game. It's just his game is propaganda from the opposite direction to that we normally experience.
Yeah. I got no problem with whatever game existing. If you have whatever your viewpoint is, you should be able to express it. And people don't want to associate it with him. That's fine. But there seems to be this. I don't agree with the kind of association like, oh, you got that game, you read that game, oh, you piece of shit. That I don't go in for. I mean, my CD collection, I've got over 1,000 CDs. And part of the things I do, I decide I want to get certain time periods. I think of this more as a library and a true collection, and not just the things I like to listen to. And, and so I wanted to spend some money a few years ago when some of the book sales were huge. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to spend some of this on me. And I decided I wanted every Scandinavian black metal and death metal CD released 1994 or previously. And that includes a couple of the Burzum CDs, 2 or 3 of the CDs. I've long been a fan of Emperor, and that first album, has a convicted, as a convicted murderer, grave desecrator, that they're all on there. I've bought that album in different formats 2 or 3 times, and Varg, that seems to be, I don't know, and it's the racism. I mean, you're a guy to kill someone. Yeah, not the murder. That's don't get that touchy about that for some reason. So it's the racism, and on one hand, I can understand it. On the other hand, I've met too many people that don't give a shit. I mean, I've got Burzum CDs in my collection, and it'll be 2 or 3 out of 1,000, and that, and I mean, it's so fucking tiresome.
Yeah. Well, yeah,
You know,
like you,
I'm
I
not
think,
going to go. Yeah, I'm
no,
not
go
going
on.
to go to a metal show for whatever band. And, you know, it'll be someone in a Burzum shirt. You know, I mean, any show of any size, it's going to happen. Not going to go around and be like, oh, well, it's just there's no. I don't see the point. What does it do except shit up the place?
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's just with that example. I mean, I've talked about racial holy war as well, that abortion of a game before. You know, I've looked at awful
Never
games
seen
and
it.
said,
Yeah.
is there anything we can extract from this that's useful?
Yeah.
And with these kind of propagandized games, that's often a what if scenario. You know, what if races were actually different? What kind of, to the extent that they want to say, you know, how different they'd be. But we kind of already have that in fantasy games, and that's what kind of contextualized what went on with Varg and Niflheim to me, is that you've got people complaining already that orcs are racist and that killing orcs is racist and so on. And these are things that don't even exist. Yeah, that kind of deflates the argument against his propagandized game, however awful his views and so on are. If people are getting upset about things that don't even exist, you know, how low is their trigger bar? Yeah, I read it. It's not, in my opinion, a very good game. I don't like his views and whatever, but I just worry that being so hypersensitive as to denounce Drow as blackface, or to try and claim that, you know, slaughtering orcs in an entirely fantastical dungeon is racist, just kind of takes any kind of sting or concern out of worries we might have about these things.
Yeah, I understand why Varg's an edge case, because his real life views are very plain. That's different than just, oh, we're going to put this difficult issue in a role-playing game. At the same time, Varg is someone that is more famous than anyone's ever been in role-playing, except for Gygax. Yeah. So on the other hand, you know, some of the stuff I got, oh, you're just giving a, you know, talked about how, you know, I thought it was funny that he was talking about an OSR game, and people are like, oh, you're for hatred to spread. It's like, oh my God. I mean, I've known this guy was for what, 25 years, and he's like, to me, he's like a famous person. He's a boogeyman. He that big a deal, and so the idea that I'm voiced as some obscure kind of, it's like, what? That doesn't even compute. This is an extremely famous person already. To me, it would have been the same if it was like Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, or if Rob Halford would have been like, haha, look at the, you know, this metal guy is playing role-playing games. The fact that it was Varg, before people, you know, caused the shit and then got him involved in it, to me it was no different. It was just this famous guy from a metal band like this, you know.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of naughtiness. I mean, I had to tell writer, I'm not giving names because I don't think they want to be associated with the conversation. But when the writer, you know, didn't, who Varg was, and said, "Oh yeah, I'll put this out to my mailing list," I was like, "No, wait. You might want to, you know, Google
think about
his
that.
name. Yeah, Google his name and then make that decision." So, but he is a celebrity in my world, and celebrity both for, you know, the music, which is legitimate, but also like a Charles Manson kind of celebrity too. Yeah. Which, so, you know, if suddenly Charles Manson, you know, it was, you know, there was a news report that Charles Manson was playing D&D in prison, better damn well believe everyone's going to start talking about that.
It just makes sense. The other thing that struck me as weird is, you know, the proportionality of the reaction. I mean, the reaction to an actual, you know, white supremacist putting out a game that's explicitly racist was pretty much the same, maybe even a little bit less than what the reactions other people have had for just including controversial content in a game or trying to talk about difficult issues in a game. It didn't seem to be much sense of proportionality.
Because he's not trying to release it in the usual gamer spaces. He was doing limited things off of his own website. So he wasn't trying to show up at Gen Con with it. He wasn't trying to put it up on one bookshelf. So he was, keeping himself out of the way for the most part. Even this review that up in and posted, I mean, that was on his YouTube channel. He wasn't going around to, RPG Net and saying, I've reviewed this game. So, of course, it's not get a lot of outrage because he's staying in his corner, as it were.
Yeah, I think people are. The other thing is that people are kind of fine-tuned to look for things to be outraged about, especially when it's you or me or Venger or Zach or a handful of other people, pundit maybe.
I think it depends. I mean, I think people are getting ability to outrage people. I think it's I think people have gotten used to it. And the thing is, I'm a goofball. Like the pundit goes on a thing. I mean, I don't know if he's just trolling or if he's really serious and talking about the swine, but that, he's at least coming across as serious and has kept a persistent persona of being really fucking angry and having these enemies. Whereas I do this stuff, it really is in a sense of, it's fun. There's like a serious point that we should be able to do this and present it without getting a lot of shit. But at the same time, I'm having fun with what I'm doing. And, maybe I'll get serious at sometimes. I want, the monster thing it'll be out hopefully this year, for monsters.
Yeah.
To put in this thing. And so many people were sending dick monsters. And it was the penis that does that. And that's the penis. I just rejected every penis monster. And just
misandry.
There was one penis monster that looks like basically an urchin that instead of spikes just has dicks. and that's... And I do that, and that's total mischief and fun. It's not. It's supposed to be silly. Like, for example, I was just watching earlier this morning, movie 43.
Don't know.
It was called. It was this awful bomb of a movie that everyone says was infantile. I mean, the opening skit. Basically, who was it? Hugh Jackman that had testicles hanging from his chin, going on a blind date, and the date just trying to ignore these testicles bobbing in the soup and all his other shit. Just completely outrageous absurdity. And I will do more serious, this is really fucked up shit, but a lot of it is just me being goofy because I have, quote unquote, juvenile sense of humor, although, you'd be upset if a juvenile saw it in a book for some reason. So people, I think, realize that this is just what I do. I mean, I legitimately like horror movies and graphic horror movies and stupid comedy like that and heavy metal and all that imagery. And, I'm gonna do it, and it's not because hopefully, immature person, but I hope people realize it's not like evil, kind of serious political evil. He wants this thing to happen to those people because he's bad. So I think that's different with some of the other people that get the outrage, where it's more earnest, illogical kind of grounds where people start arguing with each other. So I exist in a permanent state of bewilderment that people are so upset with me, to be honest. People say I do it to be provocative, but I just don't understand other people, I guess. So sticking with outrage culture for the moment, as an expat American living in one of the most socialist countries in Europe, I have to ask what your reaction to Trump is. Well, the thing is, the entire time I've been gone, and that's Obama has been been away from the States. Everything I hear from the U.S. already sounded like Mad Max. An idiot. He's obviously shouldn't be president. He's the second worst candidate in modern times to run for the office. And Pence, Mike Pence, he's the danger.
Assassination insurance.
No. The thing is that Pence is the evil here. It's like in the primaries, I thought Trump was a better choice than Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz is a true believer. Mike Pence is a true believer, but at least right now, it's not a Cheney-Bush situation where Cheney's just the power behind the throne, and Bush is like, oh, yeah, that sounds great. With all the shit that I really believe he's in charge with all the cabinet appointments and all that in the policies. I believe he's in charge, but he, at the very least, has to convince Donald Trump that all his bullshit is somehow going to make America great again. And if Donald Trump disagrees, then, kind of person that will have no problem telling Pence, probably tweet about, oh, Pence said something really fucking stupid today. At least that's the impression I get of the whole thing. That Trump is just really there's nothing good that's going to come of this. It's a fucking shit show. I could have been behind fucking shit over candidate up until Pence. Once he picked Pence, you'll notice that the opposition from the elite, I don't want to say that, the standard Republican Party, the normal Republicans, as soon as Trump picked Pence, that resistance kind of went away.
Yeah.
And to me, that Trump became like Mr. fucking ultra Republican at that point. He what boats was he really going to rock at that point? And yeah, this is going to be a really fucking tiresome 4 years. And it's going to be a tiresome 4 years because of all the shit that Trump is legitimately going to do that's bad. Of everyone losing their fucking mind every time he says some stupid shit on Twitter.
Yeah.
Why?
I guess.
Why? Just fucking ignore that and look at what he's actually. Trump farted at an official dinner. Let's have 40 million website articles about Trump's unpresidential fart. Oh, God, there's actual shit going down here, people. Can we concentrate on that?
I guess the silver lining is that, I guess, maybe he'll inspire a strong counterculture and maybe a swing back the other way, but hopefully a more humble swing back the other way next time.
Yeah, that's not... Well, everything I've heard about the Democratic Party is that they're just doubling down on the shit they were doing. Hopefully that's wrong. Hopefully, but, I'll this guy. I have never given money to an individual candidate for anything before, but I gave money to Sanders because living in Finland, oh gosh, yeah, sorry, dead air. Life is fundamentally different here if you have no money than if you have no money in the U.S. And that made me a believer in so many things that I never was in the U.S. because in the U.S., functional, really. And in Finland, nothing is perfect. Every place has its problems, has its faults, has shit that falls through the cracks. But on the whole, there is a lot less stress here. Got little money as compared to the U.S. I mean, in the U.S., if you lose a job and this is life and death. Oh shit, I'm going to be homeless, and that's going to fuck up, the next decade of my life easy.
Yeah.
So horrible here. It sucks. You always rather have money than not, but it's quality of life, but not a life and death matter as far as I could tell.
Yeah, well, that's kind of how I wanted to. It's kind of how I wanted to round out the interview. Really, sort of end up talking a bit about Finland and your personal life and what it's like living there. Really, I mean, we've just suffered Brexit, which is our own Trump, or vice versa. I guess you could say, which threatens to cut us off from the rest of Europe and places like Finland. There seems to be this rise of nationalism across Europe. I don't know whether that's been reflected at all in Finland.
Finland, we had the True Finns Party, which was making a lot of gains, and then it got to the point where they didn't want to be in the actual government. It's like they wanted to be perpetual opposition. But in the current government, and it was this, they put the True Finns, the anti-Europe, anti-immigrant, and they made the fucking guy the foreign Boris Johnson situation. It's like, why?
Uh-oh.
Who are you punishing more? The idiot, or everyone that has to deal with the idiot? Nobody. How could these people want this job? These are the people they're trying to get away from, and now go deal with them. Who does that benefit? I don't get it.
So I mean, sorry, go on.
Since that's happened, I don't follow the politics too closely here, because that's a level of Finnish that I'm not really not that fluent to understand all the political ins and outs. But it's my understanding that they're not quite so popular now that they've actually been part of the government.
I mean, you are an immigrant, obviously, just not necessarily a visually obvious one or whatever else. Have you noticed any sort of hardening of attitudes towards you, or have you still been welcome everywhere?
No, I've been fine. I mean, it was when the biggest fucked up thing happened very quickly after coming to Helsinki. So it would have been 2008, summer 2008. I was out with someone, and there was someone at the train station, a big muscular white guy. I can't remember, he had some sort of club in his hand, and he was like screaming at black people. And that was just like, this guy's just built like a big brick shit house, and it was just like, okay, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here before he hears any non-Finnish coming out of my mouth. But that was years ago, and now definitely Helsinki has become definitely in the years that I've been here more racially diverse, more of a cosmopolitan city, and I can see sort of on a superficial level why people have a problem with that, because there are more and more places opening in Helsinki. I mean, actual storefronts, actual restaurants opened by have no Finnish inside, not on the sign, not on the menus, not on anything. It's just a completely non-Finnish environment. I think that's weird. Even though, I'm sitting here, English language publisher, I don't have room to talk, but it's weird walking through Helsinki and there's just so much that's not Finnish. And Finns are really reserved people, unless they're drunk. But they'll walk and they're not, but the people coming from down south, they're a more vocal, emotive. I that's just the culture, and so more of them in groups moving around. They're more moving around a lot more. They're a lot louder as a group than your Finns would be. So I can totally see how that just foreigners walking and talking could seem by itself like hooliganism, because they're drawing such attention to themselves in a way that Finns generally don't, that Finns only do when they're drunk.
Yeah.
And that's when a Finn will get into trouble, when they're drunk. But these guys aren't necessarily drunk. They're just, walking down the street, having their conversations, goofing off. But I think that triggers that kind of, oh shit, that's the mark of trouble.
Yeah, I've heard the Finns are like the English dialed up to 11 in a lot of ways. So.
Oh, I love elevators. Nobody tries to say shit to me in an elevator here. That is so wonderful.
It does sound like heaven.
My wife complains that I'm too much like a stereotypical Finn, the way I'm just very
So how difficult was it for you to move to Finland? Did you have ancestry there? You know, I'm just thinking
I moved. It was easy. Full story. I was living in Atlanta. Decided I had enough of this shit. I wanted to get back to where there's some snow. I just started, flirting with girls on the internet that were from Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland.
Ah, so you're an American bride.
Yes. And I met someone, and it was an au pair working in the States at the time. When she went back home, and I eventually followed her. We got married. Didn't work out. I decided, well, I'm not fucking leaving. Moved to Helsinki at that point, met someone else, and then here I've been. That was late 2008 that I met my wife now. So, yeah, I'm now not considering I can't, speak the language. I can read, more or less. I can keep up with subtitles at the movies when they're speaking non-English. I'm running a business that's making, modest profit. I'm paying taxes. I'm frequenting all the local businesses, and I think I'm not causing any fucking trouble for anyone around here. So, what more do you want to besides learn the goddamn language?
Were there a lot of obstacles to you for moving? The reason I'm kind of getting onto this is that due to Brexit, we're all going to lose we're probably going to lose our freedom of movement in Europe. And a lot of people who are very attached to Europe and might want to move abroad are now feeling daunted by the process. And obviously, you were non-European, but you moved to a European country. I just feel like your experience might be relevant to some people. Were there a lot of hoops to jump through? Was it very difficult to get leave of stay there?
Okay, well, let me talk about England or Britain first. When I went to Dragonmeet, I got detained at immigrations. I've been between the Games Expo and Dragonmeet going back to 2010. I think this was times I've been into England to do business at conventions as a European resident. And now I'm a permanent Finland. But this time, the fact that I was going there to do trade, and I've been very honest every time I've gone through, what are you doing here? Why? Where are you staying? How long are you staying? I've always told the truth because I didn't do anything wrong. So this time, I get flagged because I'm an American that's going to do business in Britain without a visa. Right. Even though I'm a permanent European resident and my company was founded and registered in the EU, and Britain is still the EU, and it's supposed to be the common market and that kind of thing. And I got put in the little corralled off area, not in a separate room, so everyone that's going through the immigrations line is just looking at us in this little roped off area, just thinking, "Oh God, terrorists!" And, So eventually they came out to talk to me a few times, started asking about my wife and questions they knew the answers to. They've got some file on me. What about your wife? Is she English? No, she's Finnish, but she lived in England. Well, yeah. When? Well, before I met her, that would have been, early mid. They're like, yes. And it's like, okay, you know this already. I guess they're trying to. My identity is not in question. It's just my status to come in here and sell. So I didn't understand these questions. And eventually they let me through because they had always let me through before. And they, technically, this is against the rules. We shouldn't be letting you in. So I asked them, okay, what visa do I need? What do I need to do? Because I've got to go back for the Games Expo beginning of June. What do I need to do this properly? People at that point, that had been conferring, and they just admitted they don't know. they're none of their normal protocols. Situation. So I haven't jumped through the proper hoops, and as far as they can tell, there is no proper hoop.
Right. That sounds terrible.
Fucking great. Okay. Yeah. That's fucking awesome. You've been such a help. So but as far as the hoops here, no, it was it was relationship. There were all the all the residency permit things. It's been intrusive and embarrassing in the interviews that they give. But I, was legitimately coming to get married. And, I lived with her, it was a year and a half.
Yeah.
And it ended up not working out because, having this long distance relationship where you visit each other for a few weeks at a time is a lot different than living with somebody. Surprise. So yeah, it was just some money and some time and some interviews. But yeah, if you're not getting married, if you're not coming to get married, process would be, I don't know.
Yeah. But the point is, you managed it. It's not that difficult if you're really determined.
If I could do it, any fucking person can do it.
I was skirting around saying that. But how do you find the saunas?
I avoid them. I've gone.
I didn't think you were allowed.
Well, that's the thing. I was living in Atlanta, and I came to Finland for cold weather. Why the hell would I start steaming myself?
I thought it was a rule you had to.
Between Atlanta, when I was getting ready to come here, I went back to Florida for a bit, where my family lives. And I got a job that summer and fall, working for the local school system, working in the warehouse, loading in furniture to the new schools and things like that. And, 2 tractor trailers backed up against each other with no air on the asphalt in the middle of a Florida summer. And I'm moving furniture. Feels like to me. I don't fucking want that. It's gross.
So I thought the Finns wouldn't trust you unless you cooked yourself a bit, you see.
They've dragged me in. I've gone to sauna a few times, my wife, and it's just like, you like this? Yeah. And she goes every week, in the sauna in our apartment building here. And, I remember the first time I was in a sauna, it was a girl I was dating, in between marriages. and the first time, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, girl wants to do this. Okay, I'll do what the girl wants. Okay. And I'm just sitting there like, and I was thinking it was just going to be the 2 of us. We were on our family's property. Oh, yeah, we're going to get naked in there. It's going to be sexy time. Huh? No, it's just like, oh, God, I'm dying.
Percolate.
No fucking shit. The temperatures in there can get above boiling. Temperature, and people are in there going, oh, nice sauna, huh? Like, fuck this. Fuck. My eyes are burning. Fuck you. Well, Finnish people can be goddamn weird.
But you like it over there because you like weird.
Yeah. Well, there's certain kinds of weird. I don't have to follow them naked into steam rooms and shit. So you
can opt out.
This foreigner will not intrude on that national culture.
Sacred space. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap things up. Is there anything you want to pimp or shill while you're here?
No, not right now. Everything, I just released Broodmother Sky Fortress and Blood in the Chocolate, available from the LOTFP web store and selected direct retail outlets. The pallets should have arrived already at the distributor in the U.S., so in the next couple of weeks, that should start getting out to your local game stores. Go get those things. I mean, those are the latest and greatest. Broodmother has been best reviews since Red and Pleasant Land. Blood in the Chocolate, it's fucking excellent. It's like a weird horror sideways take on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and it's got Jason Thompson, the guy that does all of the walkthrough artwork for Wizards of the Coast. He did all of the art on this book, and he did one of those walkthrough maps that are that's with the PDF version. So that's the current stuff I'm plugging. In a couple months, hopefully I'll have more stuff to plug, but we know how timetables go, so I don't want to give any dates on that. And
what's your website address?
fp.com.
Okay, and where can people find you on social media if you use it at all?
It's all linked off of lotfp.com.
So they can get it all there. Okay. Well, let's wrap it up there. Thanks for chatting. If you happen to have any freelance work going, do hit me up. I'm looking for extra work at the moment. All right.
Okay.
Thanks for listening, guys, and see you soon talking to someone else. Bye-bye.